Hi, my name is Diane, and I have agreed and been asked to tell my story of being on the other side. It was about a year and a half ago, which this is from now, would be January of 2007. And I had an appendicitis, and it was a burst appendix that was several hours before it was operated on. And I'm not going to go into the medical part here. I'm going to concentrate on more of the spiritual part, because that's what we all are trying to connect with. I first went into this building. This building was kind of like a cross between a barn and an old 18th century church that had been run down, and I stayed there for a while. And I won't go into much detail there, but it was encountering various things that went on there. And eventually some man came up to me and said, "You do not belong here," and sent me back to this world. And I woke up. I had been unconscious, I later realized, for about 2.5, 3 hours. And no one had noticed. I was in the ER. I waited there for 7 hours before they'd even say boo to me. I came back and they did their thing, and then I found myself later in the surgery going back to this place that was like a big field with this kind of hanging tent over it. And it was a class. We had various tools that we were supposed to work with and people we were supposed to work with and learn to use these tools. And from that, we went to other places and we used those tools. And in my case, it was to heal. Other people, to build constructs. Other people, it was an infinite number of tasks that these others had been asked to do. Well, I've never been much of a healer. I'm an engineer by trade, but I ended up healing people and beings and so forth. I eventually came back from that a second time and then went through some other things at the hospital. And then I want to concentrate on the third one, because that's where we all end up. I found myself in a very loving place. I went back there a third time. And I found myself in this rolling hills, these beautiful rolling hills of like memory foam. When you lie down on it, it was like nothing that I've ever felt, just total peace. And this being came up to me, genderless, very, very powerful, loving being, who just took me in its arms and held me, loving me for just exactly who I am, my quirks, my virtues, my strengths, my weaknesses, everything about me. Just totally, you are, and I love you the way you are. That total acceptance, that total, I wouldn't have to change anything about me or be anything else, because I was loved for exactly who I was. And by its side was a kind of male being who was like a protector. And that protector was saying, "You're completely safe." And I interacted with this being. And it was, I failed to mention that before coming to this place, I had chosen not to come back. So this is where I was. This is where I was going to stay until I went to the next existence. I experienced this being for a long time. I kind of melted in its lap and merged with it. And merged with the place. It was a place like no other. Everything, all the judgments, all the anxiety of this world just melted off of me like butter on a hot counter. It was like no other. And eventually, it came to me and it looked at me and said, "Now it's time to go." And I thought I was going to go to a different lifetime, a different existence, a different place, because I had been to several places prior to this. In the class, I had gone to a number of worlds doing healings. And so I thought it was going to be another place, but then I found myself suddenly in the hospital with 3 doctors hanging over me. And they had said, "It took us a lot of time and effort to wake you up." Well, this was a very expensive wake-up call. According to the medical records later, it was obvious that I had been resuscitated. in some fashion. Now, to what detail, I have no recollection of since I wasn't there. However, I came back a different person. My friends said, it's not that you've changed. It's the fact that you are completely different, a different incarnation, an entirely different person. And I came back with a different perspective on life. And this has a slightly humorous epilogue to it. Just before I had gotten sick and had this encounter. Oh, and by the way, there was something else I'd forgotten. Prior to that, I had a temperature of 105 and was pretty seriously ill with peritonitis. When I came back, the peritonitis had disappeared, to the mystery of the medical professionals. And I quickly recovered after that, and went home several days later, and came back as a different person. A person who had been touched by this entity who had loved me unconditionally. And that I opened myself up on a spiritual level. I used to be in my head, and one could argue that I still am to some degree, but not like I used to be. I've become a more empathic, more loving person, and I know eventually I will be going back there, wherever that there is. But I am happy with life. I'm happier than I used to be. I take every day as precious. Every meeting, every encounter with the people I meet, I take as an own precious continuation of whatever I'm to do here on earth. I wasn't given a particular purpose, but everybody says you have a mission. You have something that you need to do. I have yet to know what it is, but it will come to me in good time. I hope you have found this inspirational for whatever mission or adventure that you have in your life. Thank you.